Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR. It's Tuesday, June 30th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. At the FIFA World Cup, we are through the group stages and on to the knockout round, and Kansas City's looking pretty good. We're the U.S. market with the highest TV ratings. The games are filling Arrowhead Stadium, and did you join in on that spectacular Oranje FanWalk last week? Today, the matches in KC have been spellbinding, including a last-second game winner in the final group stage. It actually didn't win the game, it tied the game. Here to discuss everything World Cup, looking back and ahead, is star soccer writer Daniel Sperry. He's been at Arrowhead for all the games and shares his thoughts on the tournament and Kansas City's performance so far. Then I'll have some final thoughts and tell you what's on my radar in Kansas City sports. Daniel, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, trying to keep up with everything as much as we can with all the crazy World Cup stuff, but I'm doing well. It's been a fun week.
No doubt. Have you caught your breath from the ending of the last game that we saw at Arrowhead Stadium? That was amazing.
I think I finally did. It took me until yesterday, really. Sunday afternoon, I was finally sitting there and I was like, okay, we can rest in whatever that was. It was awesome, right? I've not experienced, I mean, I've seen last minute goals and stuff like that, but with what was riding on the line, the way that it played out, the way Algeria had gone in and gotten that goal, man, the response from Austria, the vibe, the atmosphere in the stadium, that is one of the probably one of the coolest moments covering soccer I've had, period. Just an amazing moment.
It had to be. People who were at the Chiefs playoff game against the Bills, the 13-second game, likened it to that. And look, that was an elimination game. The Bills went home because of that loss in overtime. But this was, as you said, it was otherworldly. It was the final play. I mean, the officials went to midfield and put the ball down, but that was it. And it eliminated Iran and advanced Austria. I mean, the stakes were enormous for a game to end that way. So,
and the way, too, with Algeria going up on them, I mean, they didn't really have that much time. I think that the clock was maybe a little bit after 94 by the time they got the ball in the back of the net, but Algeria scored at 90, almost the 93rd minute, 4 minutes of stoppage time. The goal celebration took a while, so I understand why when the seconds passed. It's the stoppage time number is a quote minimum of 4 minutes of stoppage time, is how they put it on. So if something happens inside that stoppage time, they need to add more time. They do, and I just the way Algeria had lulled Austria to sleep. It's 109 passes before Mahrez slips that one past Schlager for the goal, and just setting a really incredible fight back that Austria needed to have. I mean, they were out for 2 minutes basically of the World Cup, and for them to find something to put together. The play that they make is a brilliant play too for those kind of moments. It shifts everybody over to one side of the field, goes back across, and then back across the grain in a moment where there's less people in the spaces, and they executed it to I'd say near perfection, to perfection, to get the goal. But it was absolutely perfect, inch perfect, because that ball, I think, was maybe a foot close to going, the cross to the back post the first time. That's like a foot away from going over the line and out of play, and we never get that goal. It never counts if that ball crosses the line on the back side of the goal. So it just a crazy ending,
and caps 4 group stage games in Kansas City in which there was plenty to talk about in each game. It was Kansas City had an amazing run of group stage games. When the schedule came out, I thought we did okay with the games that we had. To get Argentina's first game, to have the Netherlands come to town, I thought it was pretty representative of the World Cup field. And then the way those games unfolded with the Messi hat trick and the Curacao point, with the incredible goaltending, and then the Netherlands. It wasn't so much the game, but the entire day with the Dutch team here, and then to have the the unbelievable finish on Saturday. And full disclosure, before we go on, we're recording this on Monday, as we often do on SportsBeat KC. So when we start talking about the knockout stage games, only one has been played by the time that this recording is over, and that's Canada's win over North Africa on Sunday, or South Africa on Sunday. But didn't we get fortunate in Kansas City, Daniel, to get the games that we got?
We sure did, and not that there really hasn't been a ton of bad games in this World Cup. I mean, there's been a few snoozers. I know the Bay Area. I was looking at like all of the cities, right, and what kind of games they got. I think the Bay Area probably had the worst on paper schedule of the games that they got, but they get a USA knockout game by virtue of the US winning the group and playing Bosnia there. So that they will have a really good field of matches to watch. But man, we really did get some great ones, and they're especially for being the like you said, the Ecuador Curacao game and the Algeria Austria game. There's not huge name teams on there. There's very good players playing on either side of that field, especially that Austria and the Algeria team have some very highly talented players playing at some of the best clubs around the world. But they're games that even the casual fan, the fan in Kansas City that was wanting to buy tickets that maybe doesn't just to go to something, they're not maybe going to know half of who's on the field or more than half of who's on the field. And it's a kind of a question mark of what do we get? And that the games turned out to be phenomenal. Like you said, the moments that we got, I think two of that same end was where Curaçao's fans and Austria's fans were, and almost the same thing, just after the final whistle, flooding over to the players at the middle of the field, flooding over to the fans behind the goal to celebrate. And we could not have asked for all of the games and all of the days to play out in really better fashion. I mean, a Messi hat trick it was what started it off, and I thought a lot of the other games weren't going to live up to that, and maybe not to that like degree of the moment, but man, they've all been something absolutely worth sinking your teeth into and paying attention to, and fully entertaining games as well.
Star soccer writer Daniel Sperry is with us. Yeah, you've been doing this for a long time, covering soccer in the metro area in Kansas City and for the Star. And one of the revelations of the weekend was the television ratings
Mhm.
for the U.S. TV ratings for the World Cup on Fox. And Kansas City is by far the number one market for these games. I mean, really, it's just almost a full point ahead of Boston, Austin, Texas, and other cities. Why is this happening? I mean, we've seen filled stadiums at Arrowhead, and we've seen
Mhm.
the watch parties in the Power and Light District, and but what you've seen the growth of the sport in Kansas City.
Mhm.
Why is everybody tuning in? What everybody in Kansas City seemingly tuning into these games?
I think that I think that also I'll give credit even to like outlets, all outlets really in Kansas City for being on top of constantly putting the World Cup in front of people. I think is one thing, and that even goes back to sporting. Like we see at sporting and current stuff, like we constantly have trainings, practices. There's at least two of the local TV stations out there, along with the kind of core group of reporters. And it's not the Chiefs, it's not the Royals, where every station sends somebody out. But I think that the city for a long time has done a really good job of putting soccer in front of people. And the teams themselves have done a lot of really good things to captivate the hearts and minds of the soccer moms and dads in Kansas City. And we have such a high participation rate at the youth level as well. Everywhere you drive, there's soccer fields somewhere. I feel like I'm not too far from the Shields complex in Olathe and Overland Park, and I know there's another complex just down the road the other way, and there's one maybe another 10 minutes away, 10, 15 minutes away, but there's a few more fields. And so soccer has, over the last 10 years since I've been covering it in this city, has really I've seen it be a kind of a fabric of at least acknowledgement, knowledge, and conversation. And the World Cup comes around, and I think combined with the way Kansas City itself supports things, like we are a huge sports town. Everybody here loves sports, no matter what it is, whether it's the Royals, whether it's the Jayhawks and K-State, Mizzou. People love it, and I think having a really good sports culture in a city, combined with constantly with like a city that's also letting and continuously putting soccer into that conversation with it being a sports city, I think lays the groundwork for then when a World Cup comes, everyone knows what this is and what how big of a moment this is. And so people are finding ways to get involved with it. They are wanting to watch the games because now there's intrigue of who's going to come to play in Kansas City. How are they going to talk about Kansas City when our games are on TV? And this city has always gotten behind the U.S. national team too. Every U.S. men's national team game I've been to out here is jam packed. Whether it's at Sporting Park, whether it's at Arrowhead for a Copa America, they 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 love it here, and so I think it has been the US's rise and the overall intrigue of the tournament. I also think too it helps that like every big name household star is going off in this tournament. Like that it would be like the equivalent of an NCAA tournament where like the top 10 draft picks are all into like the Elite Eight together, and you just get star after matchup, banger after banger, and that is what's happening. Erling Haaland has 4 goals, Mbappe has 5, Messi has 5. There are so many guys that have tons of goals in this tournament that are big names that it's really everything has drawn people in, I think, and it's been the perfect recipe of the perfect timing here in KC.
Sure has. You're right. It's a good point that the Stars are playing their best soccer at the most important time of the year. They're
Yeah.
playing great soccer, starting with the Messi game. You know, it's funny you said earlier about the youth complexes in Kansas City. It reminded me of when I was years ago when movie theaters started, multiplying, right? And you got
Mhm.
the 20 theater complex and the 30 theater. That's what soccer stadiums are, or soccer complexes are now. There's 15, 20, 25 fields at a at a sports complex, and all throughout Kansas City, every corner of the metro, it seems to me. So
Yeah.
the other, you know, the other observation I think I wanted to make from the first part, the knockout stage part. Let's back up. The group stage part of the tournament is the success of the African nations. Now, as we record this, the first one is out in the knockout. South Africa lost to Canada, but for the African nations to advance 9 out of 10, it's the highest percentage of teams advancing from any of the continents. So excellent for African football.
Mhm.
What do you make of this?
I think this is also kind of a general observation I've had of the World Cup, but this is kind of the World Cup of the diaspora, I think, in a way, with not just the fan, like America is the home of how many of these nations' diasporas. And so you see incredible fan support for places like Jordan and Iraq and Morocco, and a lot of them are Americans that live here but kind of have identity in those places. I think the same is true for players too. You look at a place like Senegal, Morocco. A lot of those guys are born in or have at least come through playing in France and playing in Spain. For Morocco and Senegal respectively. Algeria is another one where a lot of the Algerian players are coming through places in France, places in the older generation came through in France, but the other generation, the younger generation starting to make through in Germany and in the Bundesliga. And those are the, I guess, the real talent cultivation areas in the world right now, in Europe, and that is where America has been sending its best somewhere to Europe for a while now, to help the national team grow and improve. And I think African soccer has been the same way. I also think the European soccer has done what they can to kind of great talent from the African nations and bring them in, and it's been incredibly successful, even dating back to some of the stars like Didier Drogba. Before him, JJ Okocha from Nigeria was a huge Premier League star. So there is this kind of history of this kind of diasporic movement with all these people like Riyad Mahrez, could have played for France, could have played for Algeria, has chose to play for Algeria. And so that's kind of the situation that you get into with some of these with some of those African countries. And I think because they have so many players playing at the highest level week in, week out with their club teams, I think it's allowed them to do this. And, you have combined with some groups where some of the powerhouses like in Uruguay, I think of like Congo and Uruguay, over there in that group, that Uruguay normally, and even on paper, should be a team in the knockout phase. But for whatever reason, with their head coach, they had a lot of issues, and with the core of the players, they're aging out. And I think that they've been able to rally the African teams around the kind of no one believes in us. We're going to have a chip on our shoulder. You have the incredible story of Cabo Verde, however you want to say it. I'm so used to calling it Cabo Verde, so I'll call it that. But that's an incredible story. An island nation of 150,000 people. They're finding players off of LinkedIn. That's literally how they got one of their star players into that team. And so, they also have players that are playing in MLS, players that are playing in very high level leagues around the world. And so I think, combined with all of that, like you have this recipe for success with these African teams and being able to put the chip on their shoulder and get through the group stage. And I also think the expanded format helps. Looking at that, like a good maybe 3 or 4. I'm doing this off the top of my head, but as soon as I pull it up, I can actually have an actual number here. But the of the 8 third place finishers, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, so half of them were African nations, and so I think the expanded format does help them in that way, because that technically would be 4 African nations that are not into the knockout rounds. But even then, for them to have 5 teams that placed either first or second in their group is a phenomenal feat for the African nations. And I think even some of them have kind of surprised me by playing above their talent level.
Okay, let's take a break and pick this conversation up in just a moment. We're back on SportsBeat KC, the sports podcast of the Kansas City Star and KCUR, with soccer writer for the Star, Daniel Sperry. I'm Blair Kirchhoff. Okay, Daniel, how about as we look ahead at the knockout games, has anything about the group stage changed your mind or altered your thinking about who's going to win this thing, about who's going to succeed? A couple of surprises from the group stage. You mentioned Uruguay. That was a tough pill to swallow for that country. The first World Cup winner and 2-time World Cup champion, Uruguay, and I believe the next World Cup is going to start there. As a tribute to being the first World Cup winner 100 years later. So very disappointing. And boy, that their final game just ended in
chaos.
Yeah. So, but how about going forward? Biggest surprise for you, and then what do you see going forward?
I think the biggest surprise for me was, and I mean this in a great way, was the Netherlands, because I was kind of bullish, or I just didn't really feel great about them going into it, and I feel like their performance has proved to me that they should be taken seriously as a contender. So I am kind of higher on them than I was. I kind of had them as an early exit, and now that Morocco game is going to be tricky for them. But I definitely feel good about this. I definitely feel good about them getting even into a quarterfinal as long as they get past Morocco there. They've kind of surprised me. Other than that, it ended up mostly chalk. I also think looking like Colombia finishing first does kind of surprise me, because I think Portugal is very talented, but Colombia is also really, really talented as well. And then Switzerland is a team that I think could make a deep run as well. Just looking at how they played in the group stage and the quality, the type of play that they had. I think they're a team that is definitely one to be looking at in the knockout stage, and then maybe even Ecuador. I know they lost the first two games, but or tied the second, lost the first. Their their ability to uh, create chances has not waned, and I think that's a team that is going to be really dangerous through the knockouts.
You mentioned Colombia. Of course, Colombia is the team that's coming to Arrowhead for the knockout stage game. We'll be playing Ghana, an African country that advanced, one of the nine. So Colombia, of course, is a team that is coming to Kansas City on Saturday or Friday, right? The game is Friday
Mm-hmm.
against Ghana, one of the African nations that advanced, and that's the Kansas City round of 32 game, the last one in the round
Mm-hmm.
of 32. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Columbia play and their fans coming to Kansas City. That's one thing we have been so fortunate with the big traveling fan bases, and Columbia is going to be another one of those that'll
Mm-hmm.
take over the city, take over Fan Fest, and really be very present in Kansas City.
Yeah. Yeah. My friend Diego Gutierrez, former Sporting KC player, is loving the fact that Colombia topped the group and ends up here. Um, there's a pretty big Colombian contingent here, too. So, but yeah, that fan base, even not fully, we saw everyone talked about Ronaldo Messi for the longest time. Obviously, that the result kind of changes that setup, but the Colombian fans was probably the second best, if not one of the best options to have come here for the knockout stages. I mean, they are, like you said, they're going to take over. Um, Looking down the road to a potential quarterfinal of rematch of the Copa America and final from 2024 between Argentina and Colombia, as long as both advance that way. And it's going to be it's going to bring another great traveling atmosphere, like you said. And I think it's going to be the game on the Friday is going to be one that's just going to be really intriguing because Ghana, the way that they can kind of sit in and defend and do so very comfortably, is next level. But they also have some really good attackers, like Antoine Semenyo plays at Manchester City. He's been one of the best attacking players in the English Premier League the last 2 years, and so they have the talent on that Ghanaian team. They have a kind of a chip on their shoulder that they've played with, getting a very gritty 0-0 draw against England in the group stage. So I think like the that matchup for Colombia is not great because Colombia tends to be a team that needs a ton of chances to score. And so they're going to have a ton of chances, but against a team that is going to be rock solid and resolute defensively, unlike I think some of their opponents from the group stage. And so I'm really interested to see how this one ends up because I think this could get kind of cagey in the sense that uh the Colombia might end up like Ecuador and really frustrated by the end of it and their inability to finish chances. If Ghana gets one, it really sets them up for a chance um to lean into their defensive game plan and frustrate and anger Colombia a little bit. And so it could be quite the juicy round of 32 matchup here that we get. I know we've seen it all in Kansas City. I'm hoping for maybe some extra time or some penalties at this rate too, just to add to the what lore we're gonna have out of Kansas City from the 2026 World Cup.
Well, going into the World Cup, my choice to win it all was Spain. I'm feeling less confident about that choice, not necessarily because of the Spaniards' play in the group stage, but the way France went through the group stage was so impressive. Argentina, of course, we got a firsthand view of Argentina in Kansas City. Now I can't help but think if I can reconsider my preseason or pre-tournament choices that we're going to get a rematch of the 2022 final, maybe only with France coming out on top because nobody wins the World Cup in back-to-back years.
Mm.
How do you feel about how this thing might play out now?
Man, I had Spain too at the beginning, and I think I'm just going to stick with them. I think that they're a team that defensively they don't really give up anything. They have the ball and can use it to their possession so much, and the way they throttled Saudi Arabia was good. They really should have honestly throttled Cabo Verde. The goalkeeper
Yeah.
just kept making
Yeah.
saves. They hit the post a bunch of times. Their chance creation has not waned at all, and you have stars like Yamil Lamal and Nico Williams that are on the wings for them that just seem to come up and get big moments, and that's how it felt in the Euros too. France looked like they were dominating, looked like they were gonna kind of run through it for a while, and then they ran into something, and they Mbappe got too frustrated, and this guy didn't pass the ball to this guy, and it just kind of turned into the oh yes, everybody has all the talent on that Spain or the France team, but then they couldn't pass the ball around, and Spain ended up being a team that their game plan was so good, and their stars came up in big moments throughout that tournament, and I could totally see them doing that again. They're just a really well drilled team, and I think they've gone through the knockouts in a way that is uh safe for them, and maybe has a lot of people looking at them. I still am pretty high on Spain winning, but you're right, France has been mighty impressive. Whatever happens in that quarterfinal, whether it's the Netherlands or Morocco waiting there for them if they get through Germany and Sweden, that is going to be quite the matchup. Probably the one place where I could see them falling before having to play Spain, or even to maybe if they got into the final against Argentina. So
A lot of great matches on tap for this week and beyond. Daniel, always have a great time talking soccer with you. Thanks for joining us.
no problem. Thanks for doing it.
Here's what's on my radar in Kansas City sports this week. The Royals open a 6-game homestand on Tuesday and will play around the World Cup game on Friday night. The Tampa Bay Rays are here Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and the Philadelphia Phillies play here Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. Plenty of giveaways and fireworks around the 4th of July holiday, and that's a good thing because the Royals have lost 4 of their last 5, stand 35-50, and are in last place in the AL Central. In baseball, only the Colorado Rockies have a worse record. Well, that'll do it for this week. Thanks so much for listening, and let us know what you think by leaving a rating and review. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC staff, producers Gabriella Lacey and Suzanne Hogan, editors Hannah Wise, Jeff Rosen, and Scott Chasen. We'll be back soon with another SportsBeat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City.